Well, you have to ask yourself why no major news media outlet will cover this next story, why no major news outlet will interview our next guest. Why? Because it probably goes against their narrative. What happened to our next guest? A decorated U.S. Marine, member of law enforcement, who posted a tweet around January 6th. What happened after that? The FBI showed up at his house, flashbang grenades, arrested an American hero, arrested for tweets. He wasn't even at the Capitol that day. It turned his life upside down. And we wanted to have Alfredo Luna on the show today to talk all about this because it's a much bigger story than just his tweets. Alfredo, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Absolutely honored. Thank you for having me. I look forward to spending this time with you and your audience.
My pleasure. So, first of all, why do you think no major news media outlets, no one will cover your story? Why are they scared?
I think because if you hear my story, it presents a lot of questions. And if people start asking those questions, in order to get the answers, you're going to start digging into parts of our government that they don't want us to know about.
And they'll uncover how corrupt the FBI was and is, right?
Absolutely.
And we've got a lot to say about the FBI today. Going through your story is absolutely shocking. So why don't you just give our audience a little history of your service to our country and to the law enforcement community before we get into what happened to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Morning of 9/11, the infamous day that we're all aware of, I saw what happened and I was moved and said, you know what, I want to go and defend my country. And so 2 days later, I was in the went that very next day to the recruiting office, but surprisingly enough, it was closed here in Southern California. So 2 days later, I was in a Marine Corps recruiting office, and a few months later, I would be in boot camp. And then in 2003, I would find myself part of the initial push into Iraq as part of a Marine infantry unit. And then after my service in the Marine Corps, wanted to continue on, got into law enforcement and was in law enforcement for about 14 and a half years.
So I think those credentials kind of speak for themselves about your love for this country. When you saw what was happening on, then take me to January 6th. When you saw what was happening on January 6th, first of all, were you at the Capitol that day?
I was not. I was home with the newborn. She was about 2 months old, and I watched on TV like everybody else. Now I was invited to go, and in the story that we shared, the FBI knows this, and I didn't go because one, money and a newborn. It was, I'm in California, going all the way across to the other side of the country, and leaving Mama Bear with a newborn wasn't going to really vote well in my favor if I did that. So I was home watching it on TV.
Yeah, we've as husbands and fathers, we all learned that lesson. Like, no, you cancel all travel associated with that. That's never going to go over well. You are there. You've got to be sitting on the couch with the newborn and let Mama get some sleep after everything she's been through, for sure. So you weren't there that day, but what did you tweet?
So I wasn't there. I had been following President Trump's run for re-election and the elections like everybody else. I had my suspicions like everybody else about our elections not being what we're told, the corruption that exists. So there was all these concerns surrounding all that stuff. And so when I was watching it on TV on January 6th, I was one of those that kind of subscribed to the idea that Trump is going to drop the truth of what happened in this election to all of us. It's going to be at the last minute. We're going to learn the truth. I was hanging on to that hope. And that was one of my main reasons for watching it that morning. And in that morning, it didn't come. And the next thing I did see was the chaos that was unfolding at the Capitol. Now, coming from my law enforcement background, I was part of a tactical team. I've been a part of operations. I've also planned operations as the lead officer, multiple agencies and jurisdictions, including collaborating with the FBI and ATF and DEA. So I had an understanding of how the preparation that goes in for this. And so as I was watching it before things started to really escalate, I already had a lot of questions on, why the lack of personnel, why the lack of barricades. And I could see what was coming, and I immediately knew our people are getting suckered into something, and this is going to be bad for Trump, and this is going to be bad for America. And then I started seeing the messaging coming out. This is what it's all about. MAGA's extremists. Conservatives are extremists. They want violence. And every part of me knew that there was something synthetic here, whether it be one entity or multiple, whether it's Antifa and BLM and the FBI or all of them. I knew something was there. So I went to social media and I posted a post. Now it was spicy, but it wasn't illegal. And I have it here, so I'll read it verbatim. This is January 6th of 2021. Will you fight, bleed, and maybe even die with me as we take on the evil that is now stealing our nation? I'm a Marine combat veteran, law enforcement veteran of 14 years, and my allegiance is to God, family, and country. I'm ready, are you? It's time to patriot the F up. God wins. I posted a picture from me in law enforcement, from me out in Iraq, a picture of the American flag, and then a picture of Mel Gibson from the movie The Patriot. And that was the post. And like I said, spicy, yes, illegal, not even close. And that would get the FBI to, I would wake me and my family on January 15th of 2021 would be awoken by a big explosion. The alarm to my truck was going off, the house alarm was going off, and I have zero criminal history prior to this. And when I was doing detective work, I was working in the gang capacity, doing undercover work with gangs. So you always have this kind of belief in the back of your mind, will they ever find out where you live? These gang members. And so that morning, the alarm's going off, and it is by the grace of God and God alone that on my nightstand at night is where I always keep my duty pistol. And for whatever reason, this night I didn't grab my pistol, I grabbed my phone. And as I'm going to the alarm panel, which is right near the front door, and I'm turning off the alarm panel, my fiance sees we ran a house with textured, it's like an adobe house with textured glass on the front door. And she sees all these red lights on there, and I look and she's like, get away from the door. And so by this time I turn off the alarm, I get off. Now my phone goes off at the same time. And I answer it, and it's dispatcher saying, this is the FBI. We have your home surrounded, and you need to come out. This is the morning of my son's birthday. This is how my son became a teenager. He was going from 12 to 13. And my stepdaughter's crying. So I get everybody in the hallway. I said, listen, it's the cops. These are the good guys. I'm sure it's a misunderstanding. We're going to figure it out. It's going to be okay. Just you
And
guys
you
got to
didn't have
listen
any
to
idea what this was about at this moment.
not a clue. This is only 9 days after January 6th. This is at the very beginning of what we saw end up becoming a rash of raids throughout our country.
So you have no idea that this is related to a tweet. I mean, this sounds like the United Kingdom. I mean, people are waking up in the United Kingdom right now with police at their door over social media tweets. So you gather up your family in the foyer of the house. They're screaming, they're crying. I can only imagine my son just became a teenager, like for his that day to be marked in his memory now because of these people. So what happened next?
Yeah, and the reason my initial belief was this has to be a mistake is because I've been a part of these kind of search warrant deployments, a dynamic raid. And you save that for like the most dangerous, especially with flashbangs and stuff like that. Like there's a lot of stuff that goes into play before you actually deploy a flashbang. And so I tell them, sit here, I put my AirPod in, and I tell the dispatcher, I go, I'm speaking to you on an AirPod. There's nothing in my hands. I go, there's one adult female. I go, there's two teenagers and a newborn that's in our house, and there's no pets. So I give them all the stuff that I would want if I was on the other end of that door. I open the door, and there's an armored Bearcat, which is the big armored SWAT vehicle. It's in my lawn on the front, and all the lights are now pointed on my chest. And they start giving me the commands, and I'm following the commands. I walk out, and they tell me turn around, put my hands on my head, which I do, and I hear that famous click, 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 click as the handcuffs get put on my wrist. And this is the first time in my entire life that I'm having handcuffs being put on me. And this is not training, this is real. I'm no longer free. And granted, it's Southern California. It's early January. This was probably about 5 in the morning, but it's still freezing cold out here. And so they
Right.
sit me on the curve. And then the worst part of this entire thing is what happens next. And I have to see my family one by one come out with guns pointed at them. And like I said, I've been in combat, I've been in law enforcement, I've been in shootings, and I know how it was very scary for me with all the experience that I had knowing, because you're always curious, is there a rookie that's on this team, or is this a guy's first raid? Like these are the things that kind of go, at least went through my head. And I can only imagine what my family, who are just normal people, just regular civilians, and they're looking at all this being pointed at them, and to see them go through that. And then the worst part from that, if that wasn't bad enough, is I see my fiance and my kids sitting across the street, and she's asking for the baby because we had a newborn. She was 2 months at the time, and they won't let her go in there. And so I'm telling the operator that's, watching over me, I'm like, look, it's a small house. I go, and it's cold. I go, we don't have a whole lot in there. Just go secure the living room and take my family inside so she could be with the baby. Because, like I said, I've been a part of this, and they wouldn't do it. And because I told them it was cold, and this part really upset me, and I had to keep my composure because I'm smart enough to know what's going on. Is when I told them it's cold, they go and bring me one of those foil blankets to put around me while I'm looking at my family across the street who's still in their pajamas freezing. So it was almost like it made it look like I was trying to take care of myself instead of them. And so I was out there for quite some time. I'm asking for the search warrant dozens of times. They don't give it to me. And they start to go and search my house while my newborn's in there. My family's still outside.
Asleep in a crib.
Yeah.
And at this point, you still don't know what this is about. Did you ask anybody why? What is happening here? Did you have any idea at this point?
I still did not know. I asked because the first thing you always want to do is you want to ask for the search warrant. And I asked, and they said, "Hey, the agents will give it to you. The agents will give it to you." Now, at this time, I know the FBI is involved because I can see the markings now from where I'm at. It wasn't until the sun starts to come up, so it was probably the late 7 o'clock hour, if not maybe closer to 8 o'clock. They take my family inside the house, and they take me to the back of my house through the side yard, and they sit me on my back patio. And that's when the two Joint Terrorism Task Force officers, Special Agent Enrique Armenta, and then Joint Terrorism Task Force detective from Rialto Police Department, John Candias. Now, as they sit down in the chairs, I'm still handcuffed, and they have one of the guys unhandcuff me. He opens up this black leather bifold, and as he's opening it, because I'm looking, and I see screenshots of my Twitter account, and I remember thinking, if this is about my social media, I'm pissed. And so he sees me seeing, he's like, we want to talk. He goes, we want to talk to you about you putting out potentially violent stuff out on the internet. And I said, look, man, one, I want my attorney. And two, I don't put anything out that's violent. I go, you guys know my background because I know what they have to do a search warrant. They know everything about me. I go, there's nothing in my background or on my social media that's violent. Well, they obviously denied the attorney because they continued on with the conversation. I asked them, can I check on my family? And they're like, no, we really need to talk to you. And so then that's when the conversation, it was probably about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hour long conversation that they forced on me. And what I tell everybody, probably the two, for me, obviously the whole conversation is important, but if I'm, for America that's listening, two things that they asked me and I've been part of thousands of interviews in my career, and I've never asked this to anybody, not a victim, not a suspect, not a witness, nothing. They said, what political party are you registered with? And then the following question is, and who did you vote for president? And so when I was hearing, because remember, this is January 15th of 2021. And so over the course of the next few months, when I keep hearing that, because now we're seeing raids happen all over the country, it's not political. It's not political. I'm like, there's a recorded conversation of them literally asking me what party I'm with and who I voted for. How are you going to tell us that it's not political?
Right. This is like, I mean, this is literally like 1939 Germany types of questions that you're getting from our federal, from our FBI.
It is. And, in the conversation, I was caught off guard. So it was mostly dictated by them. But, I did interject some comments in there from time to time. And what I could tell is because, again, I've been, I have the training for this, doing the good cop, the bad cop thing. But even then, like they weren't even doing the good cop part white. And the entire time, anytime Trump's name got brought up, it was very, hard opinions that they had. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, you're supposed to be more professional than me. Like, you're the effing FBI. Like, you're the highest standard of law enforcement, and you guys are sitting here conducting an interview that's completely unprofessional. Like, that's what I'm thinking this entire time. And so when they finally got to the point where they're like, well, your social media got reported to us by a confidential informant. And I'm thinking, like, it's social media, what? And they go on to post that I read for you guys. So I explained to them that I'm like, no, I'm pissed. I go, but I didn't say attack the government. I didn't formulate any plans. Like, there's a series of things that we have to check the box before something that's written or said becomes a threat. And none of that stuff applied here. And there's one point in the interview where John Candius, which he's the California cop, because this is how they get jurisdiction, by having, state cops with the task force teams. And he makes a statement. He goes, "Well, you just know how to post without getting in trouble." Now, for me, that's one of the most important statements, when we go into these counter lawsuits that we're going to deploy, because when he made that statement, for those that don't understand, he's acknowledging that he knew that my post didn't reach the threshold of probable cause, let alone a crime. And when we
Right.
go and when we go into a judge's chambers, we give him the search warrant. The judge reviews it. If he has any questions for us, we'll go through it to make sure everybody understands the scope of this warrant. And then you raise your right hand in that judge's chambers, and he'll ask you, "Is everything in this document true and accurate to the best of your knowledge?" And we say yes. Now, when Candius went and said yes to that, he committed perjury, because he already knew that my post didn't meet that threshold. The second part was, and I'll get more into it, but I want to get to it here. Is there was a post that I had put out about 2 days before they got the search warrant signed, and about 3 days before they raided my home. There was a post going around, and it had the Statue of Liberty. It was a red banner, it had yellow stars on it, and it was telling everybody to go to the nation's capital or the state capital and to go armed. And I had reposted that and told everybody, absolutely don't do this. This is either a BLM trap or an Antifa trap. Like, you do not want to do this.
Right.
So I mentioned it
So
to
you
him.
were telling people, don't bring your guns and go to the state capitol. Don't go to the nation's capital with guns. Like, that's a mistake. Don't do that. You're telling people to
Absolutely.
stand down.
So I told both of these guys, I said, how'd you, because remember, well, let me rewind. People don't know. Part of my background is, in the state of California, I am still considered an expert in gangs and search warrants. This is what I testify to when I go to court. And so I asked them, how did you get a judge to sign this search warrant that I'm trying to get people to enact violence against the government? I go, and I literally just posted a few days saying to the contrary. And they both acknowledge, well, yeah, you said that, but you said not to go because it's Antifa. I said, I don't care if I'm telling people not to go because it's too cold. I'm telling people not to go. So I knew
Right.
right then and there, I know for a fact that post is not in their search warrant. And that creates a legal issue, because when we're doing a search warrant, we sometimes come across information that doesn't vote well for our what we think the motive is. But we still have to incorporate that, because we have to give the judge all the information.
Oh, so you have to show, like, here, this is exculpatory. Here he is saying, don't go. He doesn't want violence. He doesn't want people going armed. That has to be in there as exculpatory evidence.
It absolutely has to be in there.
And they
And
intentionally left it out.
and they intentionally left it out. Now, at the time, my suspicion is that they left it out, but I knew without a doubt, if a judge saw that post, there's no way a judge signs this warrant. It's not going to happen. And I'll come back to that part. So ultimately, they served me a notice in California. We're a red flag state. It's a gun violence protective order. And so they said, well, we're taking all your firearms from you, and you have to go to court on this date to get them. At the time, I was a canine explosive handler. I was doing that as a contractor. And I said, hey, well, you guys aren't taking any of my explosive aids or anything like that, which is they're just odors for my dog. And they're like, yeah, you don't have permission to have that stuff. Now, this raised a big red flag for me, Clayton, because I was like, well, one, we have to get authorization from ATF to have these odors. And two, I have my certificate with my odors, that I carry in my truck. And so I told him, I go, no, that's inaccurate. I go, if you go to my truck in my glove box, I go, because I'm a Marine, I still have the OCD where I can tell you how much changes in my center console. I go, if you go to my glove box and you reach under the manual of the insurance, you're going to find a plastic insert there, and my ATF certification is in there. You can grab that. They come back and they go, we can't find it. And I'm thinking, okay, now I see what's going on here. And so right before they leave, I asked them, I go, what is it that you
Wait a
guys
minute.
want?
You thought they stole it, or intentionally?
I figured they got rid of it. Whatever means they did, they got rid of it, because I know absolutely that it's there, because I'm constantly checking it. So now I get saved by this, because this particular document that we get from ATF actually tells you you're not supposed to make copies of it. And thanks to my mom, the way she raised me, she made copies of everything that you have. So I actually had a scanned copy of that in my phone. But right before they leave, and I'll explain that a little bit further, right before they leave, I asked them, I go, so what do you guys want from me? Like, do you guys want me to shut down my social media or you to delete all this stuff? Like, what do you want that my family doesn't go through this anymore? And so Enrique Armenta, who's the FBI guy, says, he goes, well, you're not a bad guy. He goes, but this is your chance to take the off ramp. He goes, the stuff that you're posting against the government, he goes, that stuff's dangerous and you shouldn't be doing it. And I remember at the time, because I just, what I just went through, my family went through, I'm thinking, like, well, maybe I should listen. Maybe I shouldn't do this. Like, that's my immediate thought, just because of what I saw my family subjected to. So they leave and they give me a property receipt for everything. They take all my guns, all my ammunition, like everything. Client, I want to make sure I mention something that's really important. On the declaration for the walk through arrest warrant, this is dated January 19th of 2021, the day before they arrested me. This is the opening line of that document. Luna Jr.'s behavior is consistent with pre-incident indicators of extreme violence. This is pre-crime.
Minority Report. Like, so your behavior, your tweets is consistent with with aggressive behavior.
It's
okay.
It's pre-crime. If the threshold is pre-crime, give me 100 cops and I can get rid of gang violence in this country in 2 weeks. That's not the way we operate. It's either you have probable cause or you don't. Pre-crime, pre-incident indicators, that's not probable cause.
Well, Palantir certainly is lining that up. So this is the future of the United States of America, is pre-crime and analyzing all of this data. They'll have all of this information, so they'll be showing up at our doors just like in the UK. This is terrifying.
So I get on the phone with my attorney, same one that was representing me with my agency. So I've known them for quite some years. And I said, hey, this is what just happened. I go, I need your help. I go, but here's also what happened. I go, I have a certificate for my explosive voters from the ATF, and they're saying that I don't have permission for that. I go, so I don't want them to do a follow-up with charges for that stuff. I go, but I have a copy of it and I'll send it to you. And so I sent it to her and she goes, and send it to a couple other people besides me. She goes, that way quite a few of us have it. So I said, okay. So over the course of the next few days, she's communicating with the special agent, the JTTF guys, and she tells me that she sends them this. So I'm like, okay, cool. So now pretty much all my worry drops, because that was the only real concern I had, that they're not going to be able to find this. 5 days later, I'm working at the school district. I'm doing the gang thing for the school now because of a whole other issue that happened with my former agency. And one of my partners calls me and he goes, hey, man, 200 covers just pulled me over while I was leaving the district office, and they're asking where you're at. And he used to work law enforcement too. And he goes, and there's 2 other unmarked cars that are down by the road where we come in. So as soon as he told me this, I already knew what's going on. You only do that if you're going to make an arrest. And so now I'm thinking, because I'm still thinking it's about these orders, and I'm like, we proved to them, we sent them the information. And so I called my boss. I said, hey, man, this is what's going down. I think this is what's about to happen. I don't want to get arrested in the school's uniform and humiliate the school like that. I'm going to go home, change into civilian stuff, give my family my credit card and the numbers and all that stuff. And then I'm going to come back here and I'm going to have to deal with this. And he goes, I'll go with you. So I said, okay. And I've known him for years. So as I'm at home changing, family's crying now because they understand what's coming on. I prepped them for this. We get another call from my same partner. He goes, hey, they pulled me over again. They want to know where you're at. I go, just tell them that I'll be there in a few minutes, that I know that they're there. So he says, okay. So I end up meeting them in front of the school district. It's Palm Springs Police Department. So guys that I've worked with for years, and the same FBI agents that raided my home. So the sergeant's coming up to me, a good guy I've known for years from Palm Springs. And he's like, hey, you know what's going on? I said, yeah, this is about my social media. And they go, and it has to do with my canine stuff. And he goes, no. He goes, so they have an arrest warrant for you for a weapons violation. I'm like, no, this is my social media. And he goes, no. And what I end up, the agent sees that me and the sergeant are talking, and I think that made him uncomfortable. So he immediately makes a beeline. He comes over, interrupts, tells me I'm under arrested, and he tells me it's California Penal Code. So it was a state charge that they hit me with, California Penal Code 30605, which is possession of an assault rifle. Well, I only have one quote unquote assault rifle, and it's my old patrol rifle from law enforcement. And so I'm like, what's the bail on this? And he goes, it's $250,000, 250,000. So I go, what other charges are there? And he goes, no, it's just this one charge. So I know from my background, a charge like that should only be between $20,000 and $35,000. And so when he told me $250,000, I knew right then and there they did what's called the bail enhancement. And we reserve that stuff for like the most extreme cases, like somebody that if they get out, they're going to kill someone. like, or domestic violence is one where we would probably use it a little bit more often. And so I knew they did that. So now they're telling me, well, which jail do you want us to take you to, the Larry D. Smith Correctional or the India one? And I'm like, I have active homicide suspects at both those jails. Like I go, it doesn't matter which one you take me to. I'm not safe at either one. And so again, I get handcuffed. They put me in the transport van with the Palm Springs PD guy, and it's just my whole. I'm pissed off at this time, and trying to figure out what's going on. So we start driving off, and I share this part because this part's important. As we're driving off, and now I'm not with the FBI guys no more. It's the Palm Springs Police Department that's transporting me for them. The driver starts pulling over into this dark commercial area. And so I'm saying, because he has me in the very back of a paddy wagon. It's like a Foot Locker, and I'm a fairly big guy, so it's uncomfortable. And he comes out and he opens the door and he goes, "Hey man, go ahead and come out. I'm gonna move you to the front." Now, given that they have lost my ATF paperwork, given that now they're saying that I don't have permission to have my rifle and all this, I'm not trusting anything. So I'm like, man, I'm not stepping out. Like,
Right.
I know how that story is gonna read on the headlines, that I try to escape. And he goes, "No, man." He goes, "I talked to the sergeant, and these guys think it's not cool what's happening to you. And the sergeant told me that when I got out from the scene to move your cuffs to the front and bring you to the front." And so very carefully I came out, and he did. He double cuffed me in the front. He moved me to the front, treated me with a lot of respect. And the reason I share that part, Clayton, is because at this time they're saying all the J6ers are these dangerous extremists and they're going to try to hurt us. Well, if that's the case, why do you have a law enforcement agency that the guy's by himself, the young kid, go and unhandcuff me with no other cops around and pull the front? It's because even they weren't buying their narrative that was
Right.
being shared. So then it gets crazier. So now we show up to the jail. And I'm thinking, well, this is where California is going to benefit me because it's a single weapons charge. It's a nonviolent offense. And in California, our jails are full. So there's a thing called Fed kick. Because all they're going to do is they'll take my picture, they'll fingerprint me, and then they'll kick me out with the court date. That's what is going to happen here. I'm 100% certain. And so when we get there, they got to shut the jail down because of what I used to do as work. And they finally address, and I tell the sarge, I go, "Hey, I'm going to get Fed kicked on this, right?" And he goes, "Well, we're trying to figure something out." And so about 20, 30 minutes pass, and all of a sudden I see the orange Riverside County inmate jumpsuit coming out. And I'm like, what? This is obviously nothing standard that's happening. So I end up changing over. I have to get naked in front of people I used to work with. I put on this jumpsuit and we start walking down the hallway. And I kind of had an idea where we're going because I've been there to interview inmates. But then we turned down another hallway that I've never been down. So now I'm trying to figure out what's going on. Well, ultimately, they put me in a solitary confinement cell. And
What?
and the whole entire time I've been cooperative. And so now they have me, because I figured they were probably going to put me in like the protective custody unit because of my job. That's what I was expecting. That's normally what you would do. But no, they actually put me in solitary confinement. So I'm sitting there in this room that's 8 feet by 11. And I just remember that night I couldn't sleep. I get down on my knees and I just prayed. And I said, "I don't know why this is happening. If there's anyone that's going to get me out, it's my God." And the next day, I find out that I'm being bailed out. Now, what happened during this night, this is what confirmed me that I knew I was not going to be fighting a fair fight. That night, my mom, my fiance, they had got a hold of my attorney and they were able to secure the money for bail bonds. My mom put her house up as collateral. So they called the jail, and this all happened within an hour of me being arrested. They were very fast at getting this done. And they told the jail, "Hey, don't book him as a keeper because we have bail for him." And the jail said, "Well, you can't bail him out because there's a parole hold." So my attorney, she's worked with law enforcement for probably 2 decades now, she's like, "What are you talking about? He's never been arrested in his life." And so just so the audience understands a parole hold, this is what has to happen for someone to have a parole hold. You have to go commit a felony crime, get arrested, go to court, get found guilty, get sentenced to prison, go to prison, then get released from prison out early on parole. And then while you're on parole, do something that violates that parole. And then they put a parole hold on you. Like that's all the things that have to happen for a parole hold to exist. And they were saying that this is what was on me. Well, later on in the night, they contact my attorney and they were like, "Oh, it was a clerical error." And we knew right then and then, because I have a lot of friends that work in the jail systems, that I asked, "Have you ever seen this?" Because I haven't. They're like, "No." So I knew what they did was they wanted to make sure that the only way that I was going to get out of custody was to come out with the bail money. And that's what they accomplished. And so that's the initial thing that happened. So from that point on, now it's the legal fight to take place. And so back to the rifle they arrested me for. We showed every interview that I've gone on. I brought out paperwork. I'll grab it now to show your audience too. It's the Cathedral City Police Department paperwork. It's the agency I worked for. Has the serial number signed by the chief. Has the letter addressing it being sent to the DOJ. Like it's all the paperwork for this rifle that they said doesn't exist. So the same thing that they were saying about the explosive stuff, they were now saying about the rifle. And so now I'm pissed. I'm just like, and my attorneys were good. And we start requesting all the information that we need. We start requesting the search warrant, everything that you've heard from every other J6 case that was out there. And of course, mine was a unique circumstance because at the time I was the only J6 case from someone that wasn't even at the Capitol when this happened, but they used the same FBI case number, docket numbers for this investigation. So now we fast forward to August 4th of 2021. They show up to my house unannounced again. This time, not a warrant. It's in the early, it's probably like 9 in the morning. But they didn't contact my attorneys and they didn't contact me. And so when I asked them, what are you guys doing here? They're like, oh, we're here to return your electronic equipment. Now, this immediately spiked my suspicions because in all the years that I've been working, I've never once returned evidence to a suspect. I've never returned evidence to a victim or a witness. Usually the technicians will call them and say, hey, come down to the station, make an appointment, bring forms of ID, and they're the ones that return it. So the fact that they were doing this, I already knew that, all right, this is outside the scope of the way you normally respond. So I suspected that there was probably another motive. Well, what's significant about August 4th is that's the date of my partner that died in front of me. And his name's Officer Jermaine Gibson. And why this is important is when you go back to the day that they raided my home, one of the last things that they said before they left, that John Candias, because he works from Rialto, my partner used to work at Rialto. He goes, hey, I know you worked with Jermaine, and I know that, you guys weren't able to save him. Knowing like, and the way he died, this is why it's important. I watched my partner burn alive in front of me. He crashed his police car and we couldn't get him out. And they know the way that affected me and two other officers and in the year that followed that. And so on August the 4th, they know that I historically, on the date of his death and his birthday, I would put something out on social media. Well, when they did the gun violence protective order, part of that is you have to show that somebody has, there's a mental incapacity. There's something about them that's not right. And it's why they're unsafe to have a weapon. They showed up on that day because they were probably hoping that I would be emotional or distraught, something to support the affidavit that they filled out to take away my weapons. And obviously they didn't. So I took this opportunity to ask what I think is one of the most important questions that I asked in this entire thing. I said, you guys realize, because this is all happening outside the front door of my house. I go, you realize that the American people do not trust the FBI anymore. And Armenta says, well, why do you say that? And I said, well, you just had Director Wray a few days ago go out and make a statement that he hasn't seen any evidence of Antifa or BLM being at January 6th. I go, and everybody with a phone or a tablet has at a minimum seen John Sullivan on there. I go, so he lied. And so it's me, and then it's Armenta facing me, and then it's Candias standing behind him. And Armenta makes this statement. He goes, well, of course he said that. He can't say something that would help Trump. So even his partner behind him kind of tilts his head like, bro, what'd you say? And just so people understand, what he's saying is it's okay to commit perjury under oath so long as you're not helping the other person in this case, President Trump. And so they give me my electronic equipment and I immediately get on the phone with somebody and I have them record the conversation so it's fresh in my mind. And then I call my attorney and I tell him, my attorney's pissed. He's like, why'd you let them come? I said, dude, it was unannounced. I didn't know they were coming. He goes, well, they didn't call me, which that's a whole other prosecutorial misconduct that's going on. But I told him, I go, you need to get that audio from the conversation we just had. And I told him what was said. He goes, okay, I'll start working on that. From that point until December of 2021, he is messaging them or contacting them in some form, asking for that audio almost every 2 weeks. They ignore him.
Meaning that they probably had a body cam. They're filming it. Everything they're doing, they're filming. But so you're asking for that film, that video, that audio.
Yeah, at a minimum, I know that there's audio of that because there's no way. I mean, they're the ones that claim that this is the biggest investigation in our country's history. You're not going to the home of an alleged suspect and not recording it, just like they recorded the first conversation. So in December, we do two things. We do a motion to request an in-camera hearing for the alleged informant that they told us about. And by this time, they've given us only 8 pages of the warrant. And those 8 pages, it lists 3 times, confidential party, confidential informant, and then confidential informant. One of them is twice, but 3 times they articulate that there's a CI involved in this case. So we request the in-camera motion for that, and my attorney's asking for the audio. So the attorney, the deputy attorney that's handling it from Riverside County at that time, comes and he meets us outside, and he meets my attorney, and he goes, "Hey, we don't have to do the in-camera hearing for the confidential informant." And he's just like, "How we don't?" He goes, "Absolutely, we're going to do that." He goes, "No, the agents contacted me. There was a mistake." He goes, "There is no confidential informant." He goes, "They meant to write anonymous party." Now, the reason this is so important is, again, I'm an expert in search warrants. If I start that warrant they did on me and I write anonymous party and I go into a judge's chambers with that, the judge is going to ask us 1,000 questions, as he should, because there's so many motives. It could be an ex-employee, an ex-boss, a neighbor, a broken relationship. There's so many motives for an anonymous party. And that's why we just don't do it, because it's just, you're not going to get it approved. Now, the opposite, if you go to a judge and you're telling the judge that this information was extracted from a CI, the judge weighs that very heavy because he
A
knows
confidential informant. Yeah.
Yeah,
Someone who's
confidential
on the
informant.
inside who knows. Right.
They weigh that with, they give that a lot of weight. And so it's either you lied then to the judge to get the judge to approve this warrant, or you're lying now to protect who could potentially be that informant, because it would establish motive. So that part, we're dealing with that. The second part is they say, and there is no audio. The agents told me that they didn't record that conversation that day.
Right. Okay.
And that's kind of my attitude. So now we can kind of fast forward through this whole entire thing. So there's two cases going on at the time. There's the criminal charge for the weapon and the civil charge for the gun violence protective order where they took my guns. And so every time we go to court and we're requesting a motion, it's denied, it's denied, it's denied, it's denied. And there's even one point, and this is one of the scary things that I learned in this it's a red flag loophole. And I didn't even know about this working in law enforcement. We had told the judge, well, if there is no confidential informant and they left out all this exculpatory information, then this warrant needs to be quashed or get rid of, would be like the street jargon for that. And the judge says, he goes, "I understand that." He goes, "But since they got a gun violence protective order first, I would have always approved the following criminal order because that already existed." So what this translates into is, if you have a corrupt cop or a corrupt agent and they want to get into your home, they can make up an allegation that somebody called in a concern about you because you own a firearm, go to your home to collect that firearm through a gun, a red flag law, whatever your state calls it, and in the course of that, search for a crime to arrest you for. And that's a very dangerous thing that needs to be addressed when it comes to red flag laws and search warrants. But during this course of all this going on, we get denied everything, but my attorney's like, we're still going to get the agents to testify in the civil case. He goes, they don't get to dance around that. So on the morning that we're supposed to go to the civil case, the DA comes and tells us, he goes, "Hey, you guys still have to show up to the court, but we're dismissing the case." And so they dismissed the civil case against me just to prevent their agents from taking the stand, because we were going to ask all the questions, because I'm entitled to all the discovery like everybody else in this whole J6 fiasco. And so why is that important? Because you open yourself up to a lawsuit by dismissing that civil case like that. And they understand that. And they were willing to chance that just to prevent their testimony. So that was probably about late 2022, early 2023 when that happened. But so then now we just have the criminal case. Well, during this criminal case, I'm going on shows, I'm sharing my story. They're offering me every plea that you can think of. And I keep rejecting it. No, we're going to go to trial. We're going to go to trial because I'm innocent. I have,
Right.
You're charging me for a rifle that you're saying is unregistered and I don't have permission for it. And I have a paper that I'm going to show a jury.
What sort of plea deals were they saying? Hey, just spend 5 years in prison and we'll call it a day.
It was obviously the very beginning ones were not so pretty, I guess you could describe them. But as I went through, it was always they wanted the guilty plea. So they ended up offering me the last deal they offered me. And this was right before I fired my attorney, which is going to blow your guys' mind. This deal, I have never seen this deal offered to anybody. They go, if you plead guilty, we'll change it to a misdemeanor. There'll be no restitution. I'm thinking there's no victim, but regardless, they say there's no restitution. They go, and you won't even have probation. So in other words, all you're really doing is signing guilty. And the second you sign guilty, it'll be over. And the DA will support you getting it expunged from the day after moving forward. And so my attorney's like, you got to take this. My family's like, you got to take. Everybody I know is like, dude, that's the golden goose egg. You got to take that deal. And I'm like, no. I go, I'm not. I go, worst case scenario, I'm looking at, 3 years or 5 years here. I go, and I'd rather serve that sentence and spend the rest of my life knowing that if I plead guilty, that means everything I did as a Marine, everything that I did as a cop, all my partners that died, everything was in vain. It was all for nothing.
Right.
If I do that, I go, that's a worse punishment to me than 3 years or 5 years in a prison. And so I reject that. So then we have another hearing that was scheduled for October of 2024. I think November, no, it was October 2024. And this is with my attorney. And when I go in there, he has the other guy that owns this firm with him who had never been to any of my hearings. And I had gone, so during this time, there were actually some good FBI agents that were helping me and giving me information. And hey, you should request this. And whistleblowers trying to help me out because they were not okay with what was happening. And so on this particular morning before I was going to court, I got information on different communications that we need to request to subpoena the conversations that were happening in my case. And so I'm excited knowing I'm going to give this information to my attorney. And when I'm giving it to him, he looks at me and he goes, "You're going to plead guilty today." He goes, "Do you want to go to prison?" He goes, "They're going to send you to prison. Who's going to take your—" He had this look of like fear and panic on him. And I'm looking at him like, "Bro, you were the one that has been by my side this entire time. What are you talking about? Like, we have to fight this." And he goes, "No, if we're going to fight this," he's like, "I can't be your attorney." So I had to fire my attorney. I had to do it formally in front of the judge. And I didn't even have to finish paying them. What attorney tells you you don't have to finish paying them?
Yeah.
And so I go
That's
in
all
there
very strange.
and now I'm stressed because I'm thinking like, well, what's going to happen? I'm unrepresented. All the money that I've crowdfunded, this is where it's going. Like all this is going through my mind in the matter of minutes. And well, another thing in it, and this was actually probably weighed in my favor, is because I was a former detective, especially in Riverside County. The judge says, well, we have to do a conflict of interest panel because we don't even know if there's a public defender that can represent you because of the cases you did. So that ended up buying me a little bit of time, and then they finally found a public defender that could represent me. And so my intentions were, there's no way I'm using a public defender, but at least I'll go with the public defender now to buy me time to figure out how I'm going to deal with this. Ultimately, this guy, this public defender, ended up uncovering some information that I didn't even catch, and it because I was essentially investigating my own case. And so I was like, well, let's just stick with him just to see how this goes. So now we get into January 13th of 2025 this year. And I go
So
into
you've
court
been dealing with this for 4 years.
for 4 years
From a social media post. Okay, go on. Sorry.
from just a social media post, no criminal history prior to that. And just to put people in perspective, well, I'll share this part and then I'll go to that. It'll make more sense. We're going to go to trial. And I remember I'm stressed because I didn't even tell my family, but I was already making arrangements that if I'm found guilty, because what we learned was a lot of the stuff that we were requesting in motions was not going to be able to be showed to the jury because the prosecution was going to object to it, saying, this has already been dealt with in closed hearings. And so I was thinking, well, if a jury doesn't get to hear these things, I don't stand a fighting chance outside of just this one document. So, anyways, I said, well, we're fighting for the appeal. I go, because we know President Trump won. And, while I'm serving my sentence, at least we can fight for the appeal. And so we show up that morning. I knew the trial would probably be somewhere between 4 and 5 days. And the public defender calls me and he goes, "Hey, get here as fast as you can. They're dropping your case." I go, he goes, "I know." He goes, "I think they're dropping your case." I said, "Listen, man, there's a big difference between think and they are." I go, "I'm on my way there already." So by the time I get there, he meets with me. He goes, "Dude, they're dropping your case." He goes, "You're going to walk in this courtroom and they're dropping." This is 7 days before Trump's inauguration. And so he tells me, he goes, I got to tell you that if you can refuse it. And I'm like, "No, dude, this is my miracle." Like, absolutely. So we go in there and they drop the case. Now, one of the things that I told them is, I go, when they drop the case, make sure you request the judge to give me a court order to get back my firearms, my ammunition, all the stuff they took from me, because Rialto PD still has that for the JTTF. And I was trying to save myself time. He's like, "Absolutely." We do it. The judge grants it. So about a week and a half later, I go in, they have that paperwork ready for me, the court order. So now all the case is done. I'm a free man and I'm happy. Now, the one thing I said that I would reference is, for that 4 years that you were talking about, what I didn't realize was, I was like, This is January, and I was making plans to do something with my family for this summer. And I realized at that moment, I had never planned something that far out in the last 4 years. I realized that I was living my life between court dates. I would never plan anything beyond the next court date because I didn't know what was going to happen. And I remember
Awful.
thinking like I can't believe that this is how we've been living. You know, there was
Yeah.
two more times during that 4 years where a bird hit the back window, at night, set off the alarm, and my stepdaughter comes running, crying into our room because she thought it was the FBI again. And so it was dealing with all these things that had happened. But now it's, I get to move from a defensive posture to an offensive posture because they dismissed the civil case and now they dismissed the criminal case. And I have friends that are in the DA's office, good people. They couldn't prosecute, so they couldn't find a DA from the jurisdiction where I lived that should have handled it. So they actually had to go to a far end of Riverside County to get a DA to prosecute me. So what I ended up learning after the fact is why the case was dismissed. And I was this, which my suspicions were accurate on why it was. And I'll share one of the reasons because the other stuff I want to save for these lawsuits that we're going to do. But there was an issue with the warrant, the search warrant. And the reason I don't mind sharing that is because I kind of already shared that in this story. And so now I go to Rialto PD. So also during this time in 2020, early 2024, the officer that works for Rialto, John Candias, that was attached to this team, he's the one that signed these documents, retires from Rialto PD. And I remember thinking that's kind of interesting because he still had a few more years left. And yeah, I don't know. I can't say I know why, but I have my suspicions that they saw that I wasn't going away. And every time I went on an interview, I said, I'm going to sue you guys and hold you guys accountable. Like you guys are going to answer for the things that you did because there's so much, it would take hours to cover every detail. So I go to Rialto PD. I have a court order and I say, hey, I'm here to pick up my firearms, my ammunition, and all the stuff. And so the lady comes back, and I'm going to shorten this story up in the interest of time. But she comes back, she says, well, we can't give you your guns back because you have to fill out a California weapons release form. It's our policy and it's the state policy. And I'm like, I don't care. Policy doesn't supersede law. And this is a lawful court order. I go, if you don't abide by the court order, that's a misdemeanor. Like you have to. And so, anyways, we have this back and forth. I'm still being, professional with her, but I'm pissed. And she's like, "Well, we can't give it to you. Like, you have to do this." So she gives me this thing. I go, "Well, how long does this process take?" She goes, "Well, it's going to take anywhere between probably 6 months and 18 months." Now, here's the crazy part. Remember, I'm being told that they blasted my name off of local media, national media, domestic terrorists, all these things. I'm danger. He's a dirty cop. Like, this completely run my name through the mud. Well, it was about 3 weeks after my case gets dismissed that all of a sudden I get a call from the DA's office and I'm being called in to subpoena. I'm being subpoenaed back in to testify as a gang expert in the gang cases again. Well, you don't bring in somebody if you believe the rhetoric that's been said like that. So I go into to testify in some of these gang cases, but this is what kind of created the urgency to get my firearms because now these gang members see me, they recognize me, and now they know that, hey, Luna's back in this fight. Now, why is this important? If we rewind the clock all the way back to January of 2021, this is one of the things that the FBI did that was very dangerous to my life. Normally, and you guys have seen this when the reporting you do, when law enforcement does a press release, it'll say like the 30,000 block or 60,000 block of this area or a quadrant of the city. They put my specific address, they put my specific driver's license number, and they followed it with the statement, and the FBI took away all his firearms. Now, at this point, they know that, because I'm part of some investigations on an international crime syndicate as well as national crime syndicates. They know that I have some very dangerous people that I'm a part of that had active cases at the time. And you just told every one of their hitman and gang members where I live and that I don't have a means to protect myself.
Right.
The
Now
next
you're
probably
unarmed.
said, and that I'm unarmed. And so that created so much stress for me that probably about the next 6, 7, 8 months, my son wasn't allowed to take out the trash. Nobody was allowed to check the mail. I literally did not want my family ever to be the first ones to walk outside the door because I didn't want them taking a bullet because somebody was looking for me. Like that was the way I lived my life for the next couple months because of that. I even ended up contacting the local press and saying, I go, and I have the emails from all this stuff. I said, listen, you guys don't need my specific address or driver's license number. And I go, you guys know what I've done. You guys have done stories that I've done sound bites for you guys for. You know what kind of people would be looking for me, and you're telling them where I live and that I don't have guns. And he's like, well, the main editors, because it was the main editors that were running that story. And I think it was about 2 days later, they end up redacting. He goes, do you want us to remove the story? And I even told him then, I go, no, I'm an absolutist when it comes to free speech. You can say whatever you want about me, but you don't need my identifying driver's license number or my address. That doesn't change the context of what you're reporting. And so ultimately, 2 days later, they ended up redacting that stuff. But again, it was out in the internet for a period of time, and that's where so now I go back and I have to buy a new firearm and a new rifle because I got to have a means to protect me and my family here at home. And so one of the things that Rialto PD told me is the reason you got to do this California release form is so that we know you can own a firearm. And I'm like, well, one, you're the police. Just run my information. So in California, we have a 10-day waiting period, and after that, you get your firearms release. So the gun store calls me and says, "Hey, we got a hold on your release." And he goes, "There's one of three things that can happen." He goes, "It's probably just because they knew the whole story." I had told them. They goes, "Probably just going to be delayed," and ultimately it was. And they did me a solid at giving me the clearance background and all that. So I call Rialto, and I'm like, "Hey, you guys said you needed to know if I could own firearms. I just purchased a pistol and a rifle. I have the forms. I can give you all the serial numbers. You can verify it." And no, they still, to this day, they still have my firearms. They still have my ammunition. They have everything. And that's where we're at in this fight right now.
So now you're going on the offensive. You still don't have your firearms. I mean, maybe you can share some details or not about what you're going to do about the corruption at the FBI and the motivation there. Anything you can share about what happens next?
Yeah, well, I can share like the intent of what we're going to do is during this case, there were certain points where the FBI lied. And like I said, I'm looking through this through a lens of because I've written search warrants, I'll give people the benefit of the doubt on something. But when you do something multiple times, that's not a mistake. That's a purposeful thing. The audio, one of the things we want to do is we'll say because they know it's coming, we're going to subpoena that device because that device is going to show any recordings that existed before they came to my house, any recordings that's going to exist after my house. And if the metadata there shows that something's supposed to be there that it's not there, then someone's going to have to explain, well, what was it and why does it line up with the time frame that you went to this location and you weren't a part of it. The other big reason is because I'm just a guy in Southern California that's just trying to fight this fight like everybody else. In the big scheme of things, who's ever heard of me? Most people haven't. So why would the FBI go through all this work? Well, what I ended up finding out is the special agent that's in charge of my case was in charge of one of the most important cases surrounding J6. He's the special agent that was in charge of Michael Fanone's case. If for those that don't remember, Michael Fanone's the Capitol police officer or the DC police officer with all the tattoos that got tased. He testified before Congress. Time Life put him on the cover. That's who Michael Fanone is. And so when my agent makes that statement that essentially you could commit perjury, that becomes a Brady issue, which will follow every case that he's a part of. And by this time, the suspect that was involved with the Fanone case had already pled guilty. And if you start to unravel that thread with Special Agent Enrique Armenta and his position, if the Fanone case would have got exposed during this whole thing, that would have been a major hit to the J6 narrative that was going on. So we know that's one of the reasons that they were trying to protect this special agent because you couldn't afford for his integrity to be questioned, and you definitely could afford for him to be on the Brady list or whatever the equivalent is for the federal agents. So there's that we're going to be working on. Other things outside my case that I'm working on a legislation wise is things that I realize from now being on both sides of the coin, from being the person that signs arrest warrants and arrests people to being on the other side, is our plea bargain system has been weaponized. When they gave me the bail they gave me, that was for one strategic purpose. What I learned during that initial interview, because they questioned me about things that I was doing months prior. They had all my financials. They know everything about you. They know how much is in your savings account, your checkings account. They know what you can afford and you can't. So when they did a $250,000 bail, they knew I was going to have to use collateral to come up with that. And if you use collateral for your bail, then what's left to pay for an attorney? Now, fortunate for me, people helped me with crowdfunding. But in the absence of that, what people out there that don't have a story that's national worthy are going to get people to help them. So you people are going to get forced into pleading guilty for something that they didn't do. So our police system has to get revamped. The other thing is, to this day, they haven't released the whole warrant to us, because a lot of it's sealed. And if sealing warrants is supposed to protect people in safety and the integrity of an investigation, but what I've learned is if you get bad cops, sealed portions of the warrant could be used to hide the corruption. And this fact that warrants could be sealed for years is unnecessary. You can give warrants an 18-month end date. So the second you request the seal, at the end of 18 months, that thing's coming unsealed, regardless of what's going on. That's plenty of time for cases that are out there, and you can make small exceptions, anomalies for things like RICO cases that may take a few years. But outside of that, this will help protect us, the public, from law enforcement weaponizing sealing search warrants. So, and one of the things that I want to do in this lawsuit is expose how they were trying to hide corruption through these different apparatuses that they could use. So that will be exposed. So,
Well, I love it, and I think you're absolutely right on those points, especially the sealed warrants issue, and the weaponization, absolutely, of these plea deals. I've heard from so many J6ers who were told, just take this deal, just take this deal. Friend of the show, Brandon Straka, who was part of Walkaway, founded Walkaway. I mean, he was, his life was turned upside down when the FBI raided his home and, forcing him to take a plea deal, forcing him to do all of this. Just take it, just take it, just take it, so he can get his life back. And I've heard that from so many J6ers that have had their lives turned upside down. Just take the plea deal, because the government doesn't want to have to go on the record and go in front of a jury, because they know they're going to lose. They're lying. They made up evidence. They're withholding evidence. They're withholding exculpatory evidence. And this kind of corruption. By the way, a lot of these individuals are still in the FBI. So a lot of these corrupt individuals are still there. I mean, how does that sit with you?
This is one of my biggest disappointments. I really expected, I didn't expect it right away, but I was like, by sometime before the end of the year, there will be an FBI agent that calls me to do an interview about the interview that unfolded. Because obviously they know my case. Obviously by this time they know probably which whistleblowers were helping me. They know the complaints that I have. They want to know, hey, provide us the evidence so we can investigate this. And to this day, I've had nobody contact me from the FBI office, and that's disappointing, because we want to believe that they're doing the right thing. But if these guys are still working, how can we have confidence? It doesn't matter if you have good guys there. We're not concerned with the good guys. We're concerned with the bad guys. And we're concerned with the fact that these bad guys aren't being fired at the rate that they should.
Right. Friend of the show, Kyle Seraphin, former FBI whistleblower, one of the suspendables. We talk often, and one of the things that he's so frustrated about, and he's made it his mission, is that many of these corrupt individuals are still there. There was supposed to be a purge, and they're still there. And these FBI guys who were calling this stuff out, calling out the corruption, got fired, and they're supposed to be reinstated, and they still haven't been reinstated. So there's a deep rot still within the FBI. What about that guy Armenta, the guy that lied to you, who stood on your lawn and said that the recording device wasn't working, and he was telling you that, oh yeah, Chris Wray had to lie because he couldn't have helped Trump? Does he still have a job at the FBI?
I've been trying to find out, and I do not know. I've been trying to find out if he's still there, and if somebody can find that information out and get it to me, I would appreciate it. And to Kyle's point, who, we've developed a good friendship. A lot of people give him a hard time about the things that Kyle says, or maybe the way he delivers it. But so far, every name that he's put out there, now they're getting fired. So he's been pretty accurate about his assessments of these people that shouldn't be there.
Yeah. Well, maybe Kyle can get to the bottom of the Armenta question. We'll see about that. See what he's able to find on that. But yeah, I hope you're able to get answers. Where can people? Obviously, I know you have you have your Alpha Warrior show as well. If people want to follow you there, the Alpha Warrior show that you have, where can people find that? By the way, is it on YouTube? Is it on X?
YouTube took it down. Didn't survive very long on there. But you can find me on Rumble. You search out the Alpha Warrior show, or you can get in the trenches of X with me at X Alpha Warrior X. Or if you want to help fight this cause financially with me, I do have a Give Send Go at Defend Patriot Luna.
I was just about to ask you, do you have a crowdfunding where people can help? Because I know there's a lot of patriots out there who are sick of this kind of tyranny. So can you say that again? Your Give Send Go?
Yeah, it's givesendgo.com/defend Patriot Luna. And yeah, the support there kind of it run dry. I'm happy that, we're making progress, but these stories kind of, people forget about them. And the fight's still an everyday fight for us.
Right. And, how can you put a price on trying to get 4 or 5 years of your life back?
You can't, and trust me, I'm going to ask for a lot, but this caused my mom a stroke in November of 2021 because of all the stress that was going on. And it forced my mom into retirement. She's regained her full mobility, but she can't speak. Her speech is off. And there's no check you can give me that fixes my mom. There's no check that undoes, everything that we witnessed, what my kids were subjected to. You can't fix that stuff.
Right. Ugh, these bastards. Makes me sick to my stomach. Really makes me sick to my stomach. Alfredo, thank you for sharing your story. And if there's anything we can do for you, I mean, other than what we're trying to do here, please let me know. Our audience is generous. We'll link up your Give, Send, Go in the description below, so we'll make sure that that's there. People can donate and help in any way that they can to get justice. Because it's not just about you. I mean, it's about the American process, and it's about all these other people who are persecuted as well. So I want to say that. Alfredo, thank you so much for your bravery, and thanks for sharing your story. Thanks for your service to our country.
And thank you for having me. God bless and simplify, everybody.
God bless.